So I was going to go back into Fugue and Void, and I was thinking, because I did do a review of Fugue and Void by Moshe Link, probably slaughtering his name again. I did it a while ago, but then I took it down, not because the video was bad. I actually really liked the job that I did with it, but because with all this stuff, and I talked about this on my channel update that I did earlier this year. I think at the beginning of this year, actually. I was just really concerned about the background audio that I had, so I was thinking about doing another review video, but it would be a lot easier to just play it and then do sort of a running commentary. And I want to do another review again because I think when I first kind of played this game, it came off as having a certain part of it left a really bad taste in my mouth because of how it was advertised. And I think I got hung up on that a little bit. Since then, it has moved from not just being published on itch.io, but is also on Steam. It has a Steam release. And the advertising for this game has been very interesting because it has changed. I think due to the responses of people feeling like, oh wait, there's something going on in this game that I wasn't made aware of beforehand, and it impacted how people felt about paying, however much it was, like £5, £6 for it. So when this game was announced, I have a screenshot somewhere. I will find it. Read artistic audiovisual experience to practice reading. Explore all kinds of mysterious places and dive into a world full of atmosphere. Let this experience unfold in your head. Let it inspire you. This project took me over 6 months and is the result of my creative chaos. It is my all and everything. And an experience can really mean a lot of different things. But going off of Moshe Link's back catalog, every one of those games is very playable. And I talk about playable as in you can actually walk around and stuff. And this is significant because the thing with Fugue and Void is that a big part of this game is not playable. In which I mean, stuff happens and you have no control over it. The game typically takes around 35, 40, 45 minutes to complete and to fully explore. It starts with a cutscene that's 10 minutes long, and that is part of that 45 minutes of gameplay. I did calculations at some point. Look at that nice stock chalkboard graphic. 40 total minutes. Free time, 19 minutes. Okay, so I said free time is basically where you're just walking around, you have full control over your character, there's no timed scenes or something like that. So it's basically just normal gameplay. If you ever played Nice on Say, you walk around, you look at the stuff. Restricted intro, 12 minutes. This is the intro of the game. Okay, yeah, so I guess it's closer to 12 minutes. And then other being you're in a room and you can walk around and you can look at stuff, but then after a while the screen goes dark. After 30 seconds or after a minute or something, the screen goes dark and then you're transported somewhere else. Some of these rooms you can't even walk around. You can just stand in one spot and then kind of look around, or maybe you're walking slower. It's not free gameplay. Or again, gameplay is kind of a loose term when it's with these games, but you understand what I'm saying. It's not free movement. So that was one of the big, I guess, kind of problems that I initially had with this game, is it was not clearly advertised to me as being a mixture, and a very healthy, hearty mixture of free gameplay, but also, again, we'll see this when we get into it, but also, this kind of you sit and watch, and you sort of sit back and you take your hands off the keyboard or off of keys that you would otherwise use in the game. And so for that, this is another thing as to why a lot of people were, or this was the main thing as to why people were sort of I don't know how I feel about this. I feel like I was kind of, I wouldn't say robbed or cheated, but it gets pretty close to that line, which really sucks because, the game in itself is very beautiful in many aspects. Now, we must talk about how developers handle criticism. Twitter, where everything goes to die. I have a tweet here, pinned in my bookmark, by Moshe Link, because I talked to him. I have something, as you look back through his timeline, when I had a Twitter, I said something about, you know, I gave him links to my reviews and stuff like that, and I made notes about how this advertisement thing didn't play off to me very well, and it didn't play off to a lot of other people either. They were sort of confused and frazzled by the fact that you don't really do a lot of playing in this. He links this scene from behind the scenes of Twin Peaks, which Twin Peaks is obviously not important. But in this, the director says, who gives a fucking shit how long a scene is? And that is very easily read as just blowing off all of that criticism as, I don't care. Which is weird, because, like, Moshe Link, if you look at his online presence through his games and whatever, he comes across as a very, like, put together, nice, polite, definitely very bright, and sort of like well-rounded sort of individual. So to have this like sort of come across and just be like, have it being read as very insensitive to criticism about how your game was being marketed was very weird, and I was not impressed, to say the least. He didn't even add anything about there being a 10-minute thing in the beginning, but I'm pretty sure there is something on Steam. I just recently found out about the whole like Steam overlay thing, because, you know, I don't really use Steam that much, but with all of the cool like box art cover stuff, and Fugue and Void has one, but I can't get it because I didn't buy it on Steam. So I want it for my library, but I can't get it because I bought it on itch.io. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's horrible. Yeah. The gameplay starts with a 10-minute intro. After the intro, you're given control and able to start moving. Okay, cool. Nice. Great. So he clarified it. So now you have an understanding of what you're getting into when you get into this game. I want you to look at this trailer briefly. Look at this. Absorb it. Absorb the spinny thing. Absorb the spinny thing, okay? That's what it's supposed to look like. Mine does not look like that. We will now commence with playing this game. I do know for a fact that there are a couple of sections where my screen will just, or my computer will just crap out, and the frame rate will be very low. Please do not be alarmed. So at the beginning there was, and again I got hung up on this too, and I think it might have put everything in a little bit of a tinted way unnecessarily for how I perceive the rest of this game. But at the beginning it says the story of my mind, and I guess at the time, what was happening is that I was really focused on the word story or narrative, and for some reason, and I think this is a fault of my own, but I heard story and it made me preemptively expect there to be like a very sort of structured narrative of some sort, which I guess I was already sort of expecting anyway for whatever reason, because this game was described by Moshe Link as sort of like the big thing that he was working on. So I was expecting there, I guess, to be a little bit of a deviation from what he had done before, before having done games that aren't really story driven that much. So I was expecting something much more, I guess, traditional from here. And this game is not like that at all. This game is very clearly a compilation of different ideas that he has. It's very much in the line of his other work. Focusing pretty much on creating smaller sort of worlds and scenes, rather than focusing on connecting everything together in a big sort of like unified narrative. It's still very much the same as his other stuff. So I almost put that against him just because he said the word story at the beginning. Which is probably not the best thing to do, and I won't use the same point of critique for this time around. There's a lot of abstract stuff in this game, and I'm not going to pretend that I understand all of the what's the word, like the nuances, I guess. Nuance, why not? Nuance is a great word, of what he was going for here. Like I guess there would be like some polygonal stuff that I would point out for this landscape, which is something that is not really a big of a deal until you get to the little ball thing at the end. But it just looks very sort of low poly, and considering how many of these hills have organic sort of bumps in them. I'm pretty sure that he was not going for the polygonal look, which you can see a lot right here. It's important to know that this actually does have a little bit of narrative to it right there. There's a person, if you follow my mouse, right there. And I didn't even notice it on my first playthrough because that whole ball thing that we just noticed starts off very small, and then when it grows to the point that you could see the person is already almost out of the frame. But this does establish a plot point that can be interpreted to mean that someone is walking into this magical ball. It is important that we recognize that for what it is. And then you had these like little sparkly things coming out of the ball. What I interpreted this as is that the person would be someone like Moshe Link, the creator, stepping into, I guess, a sort of like transit point so he can sort of access the different parts of his mind. What we're seeing right now is, I'm pretty sure, is the texture for the, I guess, like the inner world of his that he is escaping to or otherwise being transported to, which we'll see here in a second. Once we step back, we'll see this big shiny orb, and we'll see that little trail. It's sort of like the what's the thing from Marvel, Thor, the Thor bridge, the Thor light thing, the Bifrost, I guess. Kind of similar to the Bifrost. So anyway, this whole first scene is, I think, supposed to show him being transported to wherever his brain decides to take him. So Brain World is the big glittery golden ball, which we see here. And I can't really tell if, like, there's a lot of sort of black spots. I don't know if that's supposed to be holes. I don't know what that's indicative of. But again, you can see the little bit. We're going into the brain ball. I want you to listen to this. Whatever that sound effect is, I really like it. Pairing it with the bridge sort of just like foisting itself out of the water was a very good idea. As far as, like, you know, obviously if this was actual water, you would have splash effects and whatever as it sort of breaches the surface. I'm not too concerned that those things don't exist. What I am concerned about is the fact that you hear it again continuously as this track plays and loops, and with the assumption that that little sound effect is supposed to be breaching the water. Well, obviously we're not breaching the water anymore, so the sound effect is not needed, and without it breaching, it doesn't really seem to fit in anymore. So yeah, there's that. A lot of my critique as far as the actual game environments is going to remain the same. It's going to be a lot of fawning over the architecture style, which I happen to enjoy a lot. So I won't. It should just be treated as a given that I think that the way that a lot of these rooms are constructed, I think is very well done. Captures the brutalist essence extremely well. Not a fan of the noise filter and the blurring, but again, that might just be a computer thing, which I can just live with, I guess. Pipes. Maybe a little blurry. I feel like there would be a way to sort of define these more, like have these look more defined. I don't know. Mechanic thing number 1. I might have forgotten the other ones already that I said. You can't like fall in this game. There still is a lot of work to be done as far as, and the previous game doesn't really have anything to compare this to, but the falling mechanics are not good. The falling mechanics don't work. There are no falling mechanics. It is, you approach the place where you fall and your character transitions from walking to falling, and we'll see that a little bit better in a couple of different points in the stream. This room is gorgeous. I don't have good words to describe what I like about this art style, but just assume that there is some sort of objective criteria for showing a good brutalist landscape, and it hits all of them as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to try not to like do the same point too much. good sound effects. Sound design in this game is overall, which hopefully you guys will see, is very good, especially transitioning to different rooms. Like the footsteps, compare them here, then compare them here. They have a different sound because the echoes are allowed to sort of open up. I think I just hit my mic. But the footsteps are allowed to open up and fill this space. Then in here they change. Having that sort of like electrical hum as you enter, very nice. Pulling a lot of inspiration from Nice Sensei, of course. Again, most of the visuals and the sound, for the most part, is really what makes this game shine, dare I say. Okay, this reminds me of, gosh, I can't remember who the artist was.
His name is James Turrell.
But there was an artist, I saw this at the Guggenheim in New York City. There was an artist that played with like lighting up a corner of the room. There was also the exhibit in the Guggenheim at the time where the entire like center part of the Guggenheim was taken up by these really intense like concentric ovals, and you like sat on the ground and you looked at it from the ground up. A lot of broad planes of color. It's the same artist that everybody claims was ripped off in the Hotline Bling video by Drake, I think. Drake? I don't know my pop culture. But like that, if you know that video, it's that art style. It's the same, it's pretty much the same thing, like the really, really broad swaths of color. So I'm just pausing right here, both for the sound. Nice sound. We heard a lot of similar sounds in Nice Sensei. But again, here's the drop mechanic. So there's like a pause, and then you just sort of fall down. It's not great. It's got to be polished. That transition has to be hit better. If you have a games architect, as one game developer called himself, maybe more fitting for something like this, actually. This is a very Frank Lloyd Wright thing also. How do you use the space to control I guess like the natural breath of a building, how to guide someone from one spot to another, how to control like what parts of the house they looked at, how do you use the building elements to frame sort of the natural look of wherever you are. And as far as the breathing goes, how do you contrast going in between like hallways, like narrow hallways, and then spilling out into more open areas. Frank Lloyd Wright was a big thing with some of his houses was creating very sort of tight hallways and then having very open sort of rooms. I've been to a couple houses in Pennsylvania where he put this into practice, and it was all about sort of how do you move, how do you sort of like use the building itself to psychologically sort of move people and establish a rhythm in and out of the house. I'm seeing a little bit of that here, and in a couple of other games that Motion Link has done, and it definitely is the mark of someone that knows what they're doing. I'm talking like I'm an architecture student. I'm not. I'm just a fan of houses. Okay, yeah, so this is like what I was talking about before. And this is a really cool thing that I like. And if I were ever to make a game like this, I would try to fill my my gameplay with moments like this, where you see like places where you're going to go, but you can't access them right away. Also, appreciate the sound effect and how it lines up with the light. We're gonna go to that room down there. I'm very intrigued by the fact of like structuring a building or a room where you see where you might be able to go. This is what Nice Sensei was so good at, because there was one section, especially in the really big well, where you had no idea where you were going to end up, and you're going like disappearing in and out of the main well area, and it really felt like you were being turned around in a specific part. And all of a sudden then you end up like somewhere completely different where you thought you would be, or maybe you saw it from like far off in the distance and you're like, am I gonna end up there? Am I gonna like be able to get over there? Or am I gonna end up somewhere else? And just like keeping people guessing and almost inducing an effect that the entire play area might not operate in a strictly Euclidean space, which parts of that game don't. That was really fun just to pick through, especially the first few times that I played it. So like even having little tastes of that here in this game, just like where you see something and it's like, I gotta get down there. Although I think here we just drop. Yeah, we just drop. Stuff like that makes it fun, because then the game itself turns into, what is the map that I can build in my head as to how everything works here? And then, like, okay, I've walked around for a little bit. Now I am in this part. Okay, how much did the map in my head make sense after all? Like, how good are my bearings? Like, how good is my sense of direction? Got some, the only applicable term that I know is Z-fighting. I don't know if that's what it is, but yeah. Just gonna point it out. Nice Sensei had a lot of these rooms where you just sort of like, just be some lights. And this room doesn't really serve any purpose, but it's just sort of like a landing area. It's kind of like a place to breathe. This is like some sort of chapel. Channeling the chapel. This is a very nice Sensei-esque doorway. It's very low too. Yeah, again, I don't know if this is just like a space saving thing, but Nice Sensei had a much better like way of transitioning between different parts of the game. Here it's all like you get to a certain spot and it fades out. Actually, Nice Sensei had the exact same thing now that I think about it. So I sort of take that back. But even in Nice Sensei, like they pressed really hard to make sure that you understood that you wound up in pretty much the same sort of room. Here it's not as clear. Like you fade out and then you fade back in, and it sort of seems like you're in a different environment. So a little bit of discontinuity there. And you know, there are parts of this game where it's very obvious that you're being transported to different rooms entirely. So having the distinction there is fine, but then like in places like this where it's like, I don't know, there's a lot of the same architecture. Hopefully what I'm saying makes sense. This is cool. Those shadows feel very 3D. Then they all go shoop right up top. They basically condense into squares. Just the right amount of ominous. I pressed shift and I felt the need to look for the blinking circle that accompanies the running mechanic in Nice Sensei. Old habits die hard. This room is fun. This is, I don't want to just say time after time this is channeling Nice Sensei, but it is. You cannot escape your inspiration. Monkey see, monkey do. Strange blend of like fun poppy, like kind of ambitious music, but also the sounds, you know, the good old noise. The good old noise of things moving in the dark. Yeah, see, like here, for example, this is a fade out, but then when we get here, it's in a completely different sort of lit environment. You can sort of tell that we came from up there, but it does not really feel like we dropped into the same room that we just were in. And this is where we start to get into the sequence of rooms that become like much less of a big linear path and much more of, if I can even, yeah, they're almost like little like experimental rooms, I guess. Everything here is very pointy. For this room we can still move around pretty well. We can run up into some of the bop bop, but these rooms are much more experimental. But see, now I can approach these with a different frame of mind than I had before. This one can hardly move. I don't think you can, yeah, you can't actually move. You can look around, but its sensitivity is way low. Because you're supposed to enjoy the nice pretty things. It's a story of someone's mind, remember. And the mind goes to very many different places. Alright, here's the room. Again, this is very... See, yeah, like this room we can't... First of all, you can't fall down these. Even though it looks like you should be able to. You can jump, you can't run, for whatever reason. And this thing on my computer is broken. Very, very broken. This is why I told you guys to remember the thing, because it's not supposed to do this at all. I think I can walk straight through it. Be fine, yeah. It's not supposed to do that. I don't know how to fix it. I want a new laptop. That'd be great. It's loud. Some broken tree. I will point out the use of like atmospheric perspective and stuff, with everything fading to that sort of tinge, that reddish tinge. Very good. That's also what made the atmosphere of Nice Sensei so intriguing too, because like these games don't focus on color, but when they do use it and they start to introduce it, it's used in very it's not just splashed all over the place. It is still a predominantly grayscale environment, which is the entire point of this type of architecture, is to be cold, unforgiving, and functional, and not human. Depressing. Like the Department of Mental Health in Boston, I think it is, that building is not what a mental health building should be. It should be a place that's welcoming, but it's a brutalist hellscape. This is frustrating because very slow on all counts, except you can jump. Just normal. And it's a different type of slow movement than the other room was, with the grate, with the light spilling across the wall. This is like, it moves the same amount, but it's on a delay. So, yeah, personal choice. And then now we're getting back into the sort of like classical architecture stuff. Again, channeling Nice Sensei. And I do a counter of like how many times I say channeling Nice Sensei. We're starting to go into the desert, just like a Nice Sensei. What I remember I did point out last time, and this was a little disappointing, is that you can hear that we're walking around on sand, and you would expect that to change once we go here, but it doesn't. It still sounds like we're on sand instead of concrete. So unless the point is actually supposed to be conveying that we have like bags of sand in our shoes, which I'm pretty sure we don't, and I'm pretty sure that was not the intention. And this is something that Moshe Link can do. He did this in his game called Muratoka. He had transitions between like a wooden floor and grass. So this is not something that he's not able to do, and Muratoka came out before this game did. This is not a very complicated puzzle, if you solve it correctly. I'm even getting like a little bit of Journey here, which is a game I still have to play. I watched a playthrough of it one time, and I just wish I had it. I wish it was on PC. Yeah, LT, this is not complicated if you solve it correctly. Well, I mean, you know, puzzles that have that sort of combination thing, sometimes if you just hit, what I meant to say, if you hit the buttons in the right order, like, fairly, you just happen to get the right button combination, then you don't have to hit that many buttons in the first place. There's no way there's not, like, Frank Lloyd Wright design, like, baked into this right here. And we have this guy. Now, okay, I remember what I talked about in my previous video. I think it would have been cool, because again, it's another desert scene. It's a different type of sand, and I get that he's probably trying to give us two different memories, or two different times where he thought about things. I thought it would have been cool to have the two desert scenes connected to each other. And I get that it might be difficult to find a way to like make us look up, but I feel like you would have been able to do that again, like if you wanted to do this, look up to see this giant megastructure, which is a concept that I approve of greatly, with the whole like fog so you don't see the full extent of it, and you're only left to guess at just how big it is. You could probably do it with connecting this location and the previous location together if you had like a hallway and you had like enough cues built into your architecture to make people look up, like maybe through a hole in the ceiling or something like that, and then the hole in the ceiling would frame something like this. I don't know. Just a suggestion. But again, this is probably like he wants these two things to be separate. Also, that sound effect. bird sound effect. That is top notch. There's a little bit of a philosophy with less is more, and I like when games or movies even, like they take certain concepts. Like there was this one movie that I saw, The Art of Self-Defense, is not a very violent movie, but it saves its moments of violence for when they really count. And they hit hard when they do count. So you feel it much more. And it's not like overblown, you're not oversaturated. So, like with this game, there are just those couple sound effects that sort of make their way through. And they really hit hard when they do. Then you got birds. I want you guys to look closely when I push this button. There's going to be this giant cube that like jumps out of nowhere. I don't know what that's about. You see it right at the end. I don't know what that's about. Room like this, very blurry, can't run, walks somewhat slower. I don't know why. Again, it's like, and I guess a lot of it's supposed to be just like channeling Dream World. And you move differently in Dream World. Also, don't do commentary with this game if you're playing it for the first time. This game is meant to be explored just like with you and yourself. There is a lot that I'm not fully absorbing because I'm using half of my brain power to talk. This is a game that you want to just shut up and play. Which I think is the bane of a lot of people that do Let's Plays, is they miss, crucial immersion parts of a game because they're busy, like, talking. I like the sound design, I like the general structure of the rooms. I'm not as crazy about these shapes. A lot of these shapes, the first one was cool, with the one that actually looked kind of like this giant, like, clockwork mechanism sort of thing. But a lot of these other shapes seem really simple to me, and they're kind of, like, in these pretty defined groups, even though I'm sure it's supposed to come across like just like a random cluster. Not really being sold on that, if that was the intended effect. And then stuff like this. Again, you could probably... It might have been the case that he was thinking about... He wasn't necessarily thinking of very complicated shapes, but these come across as very, like, rudimentary to me. Yes, and this is where you realize that it was a dream the entire time. And you were just in this little, hairdryer at a barber shop with lights the entire time. This is interesting. I noticed this the last time I played through this. That like automatically slides out, and you have all of these different sort of like snapshots of the places that you were in. Here's my super duper theory. Okay, every time you go into this, you pull out something new to sort of use for whatever these things are. So obviously this was some freaking like brainwave thing, collect brainwave, make big brain stuff. Maybe this is like a new moment that you sort of captured from your mind palace, and ideally you would take this and then you would pick it up and you would put it on the thing, and then you stare at these things for hours and you draw connections between them with red yarn and marker. I don't know if we've been there to the place in the middle. That was something else that I noticed. But yeah, all these other places we've been to previously. I think. At least most of them. Actually, no, this stuff is from other games of his. So hey, that's I'm actually making that connection for the first time. Yeah, those are from different games. So again, I guess it's tying all of his previous experiences together, showing that they're all products of his mind in the end. And now we're in frickin' Cyberpunk / Blade Runner land. And then here's the thing that I don't get. Nice, cool, we're back in civilization. There's nowhere else to go except here. So... it fades out. And we're done. That's it. We're done. I mean, the ending sort of makes sense. I mean, you are done in your journey inside your little brain world, and then you've come back to civilization. I don't know specifically why you had to go to that one spot. I think I would have probably preferred like a fade out, like just looking out over the city. But yeah, that's Fugue and Void. Definitely with this different frame of mind that I have, I think the game comes across as a lot stronger, as I would have originally said. This music is not gonna... There's nothing else happening here, so I'm just gonna kill it. Comes across a lot stronger this time, and on subsequent playthroughs, knowing full well sort of what to expect when you get in, I think will warm a lot more people up to it, because they'll know whether or not they want to pay, you know, £5-6 for a game that's 40 minutes long, and the first 10 minutes of that game you don't do anything. So you hone in the crowd, you trim down the crowd of people that are more likely to respond better to this game when you tell people, you know, stuff that they should expect going in. But yeah, if you can avoid Motion Link, there you go.